the mysterious discovery. The village of Zambi, nestled along the winding riverbanks, was alive with the quiet hum of morning rituals. Birds chirped from the towering baobab trees, and the river's surface shimmered under the golden touch of the rising sun. Iona, a young woman with deep brown skin and searching amber eyes, made her way down the familiar path, balancing an empty clay pot on her hip. By her side trotted Kobe, a lean, sharp-eyed dog with a coat the color of burnt sienna. Loyal and ever alert, he was more than just a companion, he was a guardian. As Iona bent to scoop the cool, clear water, Kobe's body stiffened. His ears pricked up, and the low rumble of a growl formed in his throat. Then, he bolted. He dashed ahead, barking furiously at something near the riverbank. Iona's pulse quickened. What had he found? Setting down her pot, she hurried after him, weaving between thick reeds and stepping over smooth, damp stones. Then she saw it. A gasp caught in her throat. A mermaid. She lay motionless at the water's edge, her shimmering scales dulled, her silver-blue tail partially buried in the mud. The soft curve of her belly told Iona what she would have missed in her panic: the mermaid was pregnant. For a long moment, Iona didn't move. No one had ever seen a mermaid this close before. They were myths, whispers in the night, legends passed down by the village elders. Yet here one lay, her gills barely fluttering, her arms limp against the earth. Kobe whimpered, his nose brushing against the mermaid's arm. And then Iona noticed something. Her stomach moved. Not a trick of the light. Not the ebb and flow of the water. A faint, rhythmic movement, a child still alive inside. Iona's breath hitched. Should she help? Was it even possible? Just as she hesitantly reached out, the river stirred. The once calm waters swelled unnaturally, churning with a force beyond the wind. A cold, eerie whisper slithered through the reeds, curling around her ears like an invisible presence. Iona's skin prickled. The air shifted, thick with something unseen, something ancient. And she knew, this was no ordinary discovery. Whatever she did next would change her life forever. A life that must be saved. The weight of the mermaid in Iona's arms was heavier than she expected, her cool, scale-covered body slick with river water. She was dying. Iona's heart pounded as she struggled back to her hut, her muscles burning with the effort. She had carried injured animals before, birds with broken wings, wild dogs with wounded paws, but never something as otherworldly as this. Never a mermaid. Kobe trotted beside her, his ears flicking back at every strange rustle in the wind. The night felt charged, as if unseen eyes watched from the shadows. Finally, Iona reached her hut. With careful hands, she laid the mermaid down on a bed of woven mats. The dim glow of candlelight danced over her weakened form, casting flickering shadows across her iridescent scales. The mermaid's eyelids fluttered. And then, with great effort, she opened them. Iona gasped. The mermaid's eyes, deep pools of silver, held an ancient sadness. A weight of centuries pressed into those tired irises. Her cracked lips parted, and a whisper escaped. My child, save my child. Iona swallowed hard. Panic fled inside her. She had delivered calves and even helped a village woman give birth once, but a mermaid. She pressed her palms together, forcing herself to focus. You know this, Iona. You know healing. Her grandmother had taught her the art of herbs, the secrets hidden within roots, leaves, and river flowers. She would not fail now. Rushing to her shelves, she grabbed dried medicinal plants, umuti leaves for pain, river mint for strength, and the sacred blue lotus, believed to connect life to the spirit world. She crushed them into a paste and gently applied it to the mermaid's cold skin, murmuring an old healing chant as her grandmother once had. Kobe sat at the mermaid's side, ears packed, his eyes sharp with quiet understanding. Then, a sharp cry filled the air. The birth had begun. Iona's pulse pounded as she walked. With trembling hands, she called on her knowledge, mixing warm water with crushed herbs, using her fingers to soothe the mermaid's belly. The water in the clay bowl trembled, as if responding to the mermaid's pain. Hours passed, and then a new cry. The sound was soft yet strange, like the song of a flute mixed with a newborn's wail. Iona held her breath as she gazed at the tiny being in her hands. A baby mermaid. Her tiny tail, barely the length of Iona's forearm, shimmered under the candlelight, its soft colors shifting between silver and pearl. The baby's delicate fingers curled in the air, and her gills flared weakly. A life, fragile yet full of power, had entered the world. Iona looked up at the mother. Lyrizor, that was her name. A weak, grateful smile touched her lips, but her silver eyes darkened with urgency. She gripped Iona's wrist, her fingers trembling. The sea will come for my child. A chill slithered down Iona's spine. Lyrizor's breath was fading, but she pushed out the words with all the strength she had left. Protect her. Before Iona could ask what she meant, the hut trembled. A gust of wind howled through the cracks in the walls. The flames in the candles flickered wildly, then snuffed out. The ground beneath Iona vibrated with a force not of this world. A deep, otherworldly presence was near. And it had come for the child. The River Queen's wrath. Morning came with an eerie stillness. The village of Zambi, usually alive with the chatter of fishermen and the laughter of children, was blanketed in golden mist. It rolled in from the river, thick and shimmering, curling through the trees like something alive. Iona stepped outside her hut, clutching the baby mermaid close. The infant cooed softly, her tiny tail flicking against Iona's arm. Then, the river stirred. The golden mist parted, and from the water, a figure rose. Mwanza, the River Queen. She towered above the water, her form half solid, half liquid, shifting between beauty and terror. Her long, flowing robes were woven from strands of riverweed and sunlight, and her eyes, pale, endless pools of water, held the fury of a storm. The villagers gathered at the river's edge, whispering in fear. Some fell to their knees, pressing their foreheads to the earth. Mwanza had not been seen in generations. But Iona did not kneel. Kobe stood beside her, fur bristling, a low, warning growl rumbling in his chest. Mwanza's voice boomed, shaking the very air. A land dweller has interfered in matters that do not belong to her. Iona's hands clenched around the mermaid baby. She was dying, Iona said, her voice steady. I did what I had to. Mwanza's gaze darkened. You have stolen what belongs to the sea. The baby stirred, letting out a soft, musical whimper. The sound made Mwanza's expression waver, just for a moment, but her anger quickly returned. Return the child, she commanded, or suffer. A gust of wind ripped through the village, shaking the trees. The golden mist thickened, wrapping around Iona like unseen hands. She gritted her teeth and took a step forward. No. A gasp rippled through the villagers. Even Kobe stiffened in surprise. Mwanza's eyes narrowed into slits. If you defy me, the rivers will dry. Your village will not thirst. The crops will wither. The fish will vanish. Murmurs of fear spread among the people. If the river died, Zambi would not survive. Iona's heart pounded. If she gave up the child, she might be condemning her to death. If she kept her, her village would suffer. She looked down at the baby mermaid, at her soft silver eyes, the same sad, knowing eyes as Lyrizor's. Something about them whispered of secrets yet to be uncovered. Iona lifted her chin. I will not return her. Mwanza's form swelled, water rising high behind her in crashing waves. But before the River Queen could speak, Iona made a bold decision. I will go to the Ocean Kingdom myself. A hush fell over the crowd. Iona took a deep breath, the weight of her choice settling over her. I will uncover the truth, she continued, her voice strong. If I have wronged the sea, I will make it right. But if there is something more to this, I will see it with my own eyes. Kobe backed once, a sharp, defiant sound. Moamza studied her in silence. Then, after a long, tense moment, the River Queen's lips curved into a knowing smile. Very well, Landweller. The river behind her churned violently. But beware, once you enter the Ocean Kingdom, there is no turning back. Then, in a wall of golden mist, she was gone. And Iona's journey had begun, the journey to the Ocean Kingdom. The river shimmered under the moonlight as Iona stepped onto the old wooden canoe, the woven basket cradling the mermaid child safely in her lap. Kobe leaped in beside her, ears alert, as if sensing the dangers ahead. The air was unnaturally quiet. Even the trees, their branches heavy with the night's mist, seemed to hold their breath. Then, a voice. You are brave, Landweller. But are you wise? Iona's head snapped up. A great heron stood on the canoe's edge, its long silver feathers gleaming. Its eyes, deep and knowing, locked onto hers. Who are you? She whispered. The bird ruffled its wings. I am the spirit guide of Lireza. She sent me to show you the way. A flicker of warmth filled Iona's chest. Lireza's soul still watched over her child. Then guide me. The heron nodded and spread its wings. The canoe lurched forward, gliding down the river, faster than the current should allow. The perils of the deep. The journey was treacherous. Storms rose from nowhere, ripping waves into jagged claws. Kobe growled as shadowy figures darted beneath the water, watching them with glowing eyes. Then came the sea bandits, men with coral-studded armor and netted weapons, their skin pale from years beneath the waves. Hand over the child, their leader sneered, and we might let you live. Iona did not hesitate. With a sharp cry, she hurled a pouch of her grandmother's sacred powder into the wind. The mist exploded in a blinding flash, sending the bandits stumbling into the waves. She rode on, heart hammering. Then came the creatures, whispering ills, their voices calling into her mind. Turn back, girl. The ocean realm will devour you. But she did not turn back. And in the silence between the waves, she learned the truth. Lireza was betrayed. Someone within the ocean palace had wanted her and her child dead. And they had nearly succeeded. The palace beneath the golden waves. At last, the river met the ocean, and Iona felt the pull of the deep. Beneath the golden waves, a great city unfolded before her. Towers of pearl and glowing coral spiraled toward the ocean's surface. Schools of silverfish darted between the archways, and great manta rays soared like birds through the water. At its heart stood the underwater palace, a fortress of sapphire and shadow. As Iona stepped onto the crystal-lit steps, the palace doors groaned open. A tall, regal figure stood before her. His robe shimmered like liquid sapphire, and his crown, crafted from the bones of ancient sea serpents, sat heavy upon his brow. King Syricus. His gaze swept over Iona, then settled on the child in her arms. You bring Lireza's daughter. Iona held her ground. She was haunted. Betrayed. Someone wanted her dead. Syricus flinched. Guilt flickered in his eyes. I did not order harm upon Lireza, he said slowly. But, before Iona could press him, the palace doors burst open. A figure strode in, flanked by armored warriors. The real traitor had arrived. And Iona knew the true battle was only beginning, the battle for the mermaid child. The air inside the underwater palace crackled with tension. Iona's grip tightened around the mermaid child as the true traitor stepped forward, Seraphon. The king's brother. His sea blue robes trailed behind him like the tide, and his eyes, sharp and cruel, gleamed with triumph. You should not have come, land dweller, he sneered. You meddle in the affairs of the ocean. Sirika stood frozen, his hands clenched. Seraphon, the king murmured, his voice filled with disbelief. Was it you? Seraphon laughed, a sound like breaking waves. You were weak, brother. You let your love for Lerizo blind you. She and her child stood in my way. I merely cleared the path. Iona's heart pounded. This was the one. The one who sent assassins. The one who forced Lerizo to flee. The one who would have let the child die. You wanted the throne, she said coldly. Seraphon smiled. And soon, I shall have it. His fingers flicked, and from the shadows, his warriors emerged. They carried blades forged from black coral, their eyes glowing like deep-sea predators. The water itself shivered with dark magic. A trap. Iona braced herself, but before the battle could begin, the waters trembled. A golden mist coiled through the palace, and then Moanza, the river queen, appeared. Her flowing robes, woven from water and starlight, trailed behind her as she stepped forward. Her eyes burned with fury. I was deceived, she said, her voice a rolling tide. You used me, Seraphon. Seraphon's smack faltered. What? Moanza raised her hands. The river spirits answered. From the palace walls, the water shifted and twisted, forming ethereal beings of flowing liquid. Their eyes glowed with ancient power, their whispers like a rising storm. Iona felt something stir within her. The water magic. It pulsed through her veins, answering her call. The last gift of Lerizo. The battle erupted. The war beneath the waves. Seraphon's warriors clashed with the river spirits. Blades met water. Magic met fury. Moanza unleashed tidal waves, drowning her enemies in currents they could not escape. Kobe leaped onto a warrior's back, sinking his teeth into the enemy's arm, a land creature defying the sea. Iona closed her eyes and let the magic flow through her. She called upon the river. She called upon the ocean. The child in her arms glowed, her tiny tail flicking as if she, too, could feel the power rising. Seraphon roared, summoning a vortex of dark water. He held it toward Iona, a force meant to crush her. But she did not run. She lifted her hands and unleashed Lerizo's last gift. The whirlpool of fate. A great whirlpool erupted beneath them. It spun with the force of the sea itself, twisting into a vortex that pulled Seraphon downward. No, he screamed, clawing at the water, trying to break free. But the magic was too strong. The sea had judged him. And the ocean does not forgive. With one final cry, Seraphon was swallowed into the abyss. The whirlpool vanished. The battle was over. A new dawn for the ocean. Silence settled over the ruins of the battlefield. The mermaid child cooed softly, her silver eyes gazing up at Iona. Sirika stepped forward. For the first time, the king of the ocean bowed. You have done what even the sea could not. His voice was filled with both sorrow and gratitude. You have saved my daughter. The words carried through the palace. The warriors, those who had fought, those who had doubted, lowered their weapons. Moanza placed a hand on Iona's shoulder. You are more than just a land dweller now. Sirika turned to the people of the ocean. There will be no more war between land and sea. His voice echoed through the vast halls. Lerizo's daughter will live between both worlds. A bridge between the river and the ocean. Between humans and mermaids. Between the past and the future. Iona smiled. For the first time, the waters of the world were at peace. A new destiny begins. The journey home felt different. The river, once filled with peril and mystery, now welcomed Iona like an old friend. The waters were clearer, the currents gentler, and the golden mist that had once brought fear now carried a sense of peace. As her canoe drifted toward the village of Zambi, she saw the people gathered at the shore. They had been waiting. Then, a great cheer erupted. The villagers rushed forward, arms raised in celebration. She has returned. Iona, the river guardian. The curse is lifted. Iona stepped onto the shore, the mermaid child cradled in her arms, her small silver tail flicking under the morning sun. Zaria. That was the name Syricus had whispered before she left the ocean kingdom. The name of the child who would change everything. Elders surrounded Iona, touching her hands, marveling at the baby who had been born between two worlds. The river flows again, one of them said, his voice filled with wonder. Iona turned. The river that had once threatened to dry up and abandon the village now ran strong and pure. Fish leaped in the shallows, the reeds swayed, and the water, no longer angry, whispered secrets of gratitude. Mwanza had kept her word. The ocean and the rivers were at peace. A hero's honor. Amidst the celebration, a new sound rose above the cheers. A deep, musical song, a mermaid's melody. From the water, a group of merfolk emerged, their tails shimmering beneath the rippling waves. At their center stood a regal mermaid adorned with golden seashells and strands of pearls. One of Mwanza's emissaries. In her hands, she held a golden collar encrusted with small, glistening pearls. She turned to Kobe. "Brave guardian of land and sea," she said, bowing her head. "The merfolk honor you for your courage. May this collar mark you as a protector of both worlds." Kobe, ever watchful, wagged his tail as Iona fastened the golden band around his neck. The villagers laughed and clapped as the dog barked, trotting around proudly. The merfolk sang once more, their voices twining into the wind like a sacred blessing, before they slipped beneath the waves. A bond had been sealed. One that would last for generations. Years of peace. Time passed, and Zaria grew strong. She was unlike any other, a child of both the land and the sea. She moved between worlds with ease, swimming in the river one day, walking the village paths the next. She learned the songs of the merfolk, the wisdom of the elders, and the healing arts of Iona's ancestors. And as she grew, so did the world around her. The village prospered. The rivers never ran dry again. Fishermen returned home with bountiful catches, the crops flourished, and the people no longer feared the waters but embraced them. Merfolk visited the village for the first time in history, their sleek tails flashing in the river as they exchanged goods and stories with the humans. And at the center of it all was Zaria. The bridge between two worlds. The girl who would one day lead both land and sea into a new era of unity. The legacy of a name. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Iona stood at the river's edge. She watched the waters, their surface glowing gold and crimson in the fading light. Zaria, now a young woman, swam in the shallows, her laughter mingling with the ripples of the tide. Kobe, still loyal and strong despite his aging years, lay at Iona's feet, his golden collar gleaming. A gentle breeze stirred the reeds. And in that wind, a voice whispered. Lyrizel's voice. "Because of you, my daughter will live. And the oceans will never forget your name." Iona closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the words settle deep in her soul. She had changed the course of history. But more than that, she had given a child a future. She had given the world hope. And in the gentle murmur of the waves, she knew this was only the beginning. A new destiny had begun.